Hi everyone. Do you have female rage? I just read 5 books that all kind of happen to be about female rage. I didn't intend that, but there they are. And I liked all of them so much, and so I want to recommend them. And I just thought this was like kind of a perfect look to do for this. So I hope that you enjoy this. Let's get into it. Okay, so first, let's talk about what is feminine rage. It is, according to some sources that I read, it is a reclaiming of feelings of anger, despair, and fury at injustices not only committed against ourselves, but to against any woman, and in fact, all women for the history of time. In the past, women have had to suppress and cope, but now there is more freedom for expression. And it's always interesting to me to read a good book about feminine rage, female rage, because despite often popular opinion, women aren't all the same. And so their expressions of rage and revenge and jealousy and hurt and anguish are all so different. And so these 5 books I'm discussing today all have such different expressions of that female rage, but it's all so real. And especially the last book, because it literally is a true story. So it's literally real. So the first book I'm talking about today is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I put out another video about the first 4 books of the Throne of Glass series, so I'm not going to talk too long about this one, especially because if you haven't read the other 4, then you're probably not going to read Heir of Fire, but you'll know it took me a while to fully board the Throne of Glass train if you watched that other video, but boarded I am, although I'm experiencing delays because the rest of the books aren't available on Libby and I'm having to wait for my Audible credits to come in, which is meh. Look, Celaena is beaten down with a capital B in this book. If this girl hasn't hit rock bottom in every single book, I don't know. Like, for the love of God, Jesus. Rowan is Mr. Kick 'em while they're down, so he's no help. Maybe that's why I finally engaged emotionally in this book, because I was finally feeling the rage for the injustices she's dealt with. Is she rash, arrogant, obnoxious, and slightly dumb? Yes. She's also 18. None of those things merit the treatment she's experienced. And so my rage was raging. And it's not just for her. It's Sorsha, Manon, the slave camps. Oh my God. Like, just when you thought she was reclaiming some power, the slave camps. Like, sorry, there's a little bit of a spoilers, but my heart was tearing. So when she finally gives that I'm Aelin motherfucking Galathinius speech to Maeve, I was feeling every effing feel. I mean, pass me that war paint, sister. I will meet you in Outerland. The next book that I read was such a departure from Heir of Fire, but then I noticed how similar the feels were for me because it was feminine rage. This is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. That was so different and yet so not. This book is about a woman named Lucy whose friend Savvy was killed years before. Lucy was with her friend the night of the killing and was found wandering in the woods with Savvy's blood on her clothes, but with no memory of what has happened. And I've talked about this before. I don't love when books lean on the amnesia trope, but you just kind of went with it for this book. It was okay. Everyone's always suspected Lucy of the murder, so she moved away and started a new life, but now a pesky podcaster has blown the crime and her life wide open. And look, is this book going to blow your mind? No, I gave it a 4. It's better than your standard 3-star thriller, in my opinion, but Lucy was a great character. I feel like 90% of the time, a thriller protagonist is like a weak, terrified, whiny woman who is completely at the mercy of her circumstances and the people surrounding her. And that's just not the case here. This girl has rage, and it's expressed in humor, in bad decisions, which she makes a lot of, in maybe slightly psychotic episodes. But I was here for it. And that, like, nice guy thing, like, F right off, my dude. If you do read this book, I fully recommend the audiobook on this one because the sections that are the podcast sound like an actual podcast, and it made it feel really real. So highly recommend. You should definitely add this to your list if you're looking for a fun summer read. The next book I read was The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. So I've seen mixed reviews of this book on Book Talk, and I guess I can see why, because it's a very subtle book. Rachel is a little hard to get behind in some of the parts, but that was precisely the point, and it's why I love this book. In some ways, this is a real coming-of-age book, even though she's older than your normal coming-of-age. She's, college age, coming out of college. I really appreciated there was really nothing truly traumatic in her life that she could point to be like, that is why I'm this way. In every way, she's a normal girl. She's me. She's you. So many of us have been there. A little chunky, maybe a little self-indulgent, creating narratives for ourselves that will never happen, hating reality, choosing to avoid it. I mean, this is standard. So because there's not much for her to rage over, the rage in this book is subtle, but it's there. So Rachel lives with her best friend, who is a long-closeted gay man named James. She develops a crush on what seems to be a very mediocre teacher and author at her college, who is her teacher, who is married. And so she schemes with James to try to seduce him, but he ends up hooking up with James instead. And she has to deal with the complicated emotions that she has surrounding this. Trying my best to avoid spoilers, the chips begin to fall where they may, and Rachel does become the victim of an injustice that, while not like super traumatic trauma, does have a large impact on her life and her personhood. And while her personal expression of that rage is to kind of quietly extricate herself from her life and start over, it still feels like a massive vindication. And I really, really enjoyed this book. It's a very easy read. I gave it 4.5 stars. I highly recommend. All right, the next book is Piglet by Lottie Hazel. I had no idea what to expect going into this, and I'm kind of glad. This book is going to stick, and that might be because, again, I have been this girl. She loves food, and she's not thin. Horror of horrors. Anything she goes after in life or strives to do or to be is seen as like wanting too much, because unthin women shouldn't want that much, I guess. I don't know. So the main character of the book does have a real name, but it's only used once in the entire book, and it's at the very end. The rest of the time she's referred to as Piglet, which is a nickname her parents gave her as a child because she would finish food for her sister who was trying to hide an eating disorder. Okay, this is the part I'm nervous about, so let's see how this goes. Here we go. Okay, I have to add liquid liner to this, and I'm gonna make it a little blotchy. Wait, I made it like too pretty, and now I hate to ruin it. Okay, so now an adult, Piglet is a successful food writer / editor, and she is engaged to a seemingly wonderful man, and they bought a beautiful home. And she's a talented cook, and oh my God, the descriptions of the food and the cooking in this book are exquisite, seriously. For her wedding, her fiance admits to some kind of indiscretion. We are never told explicitly. We sort of can guess. And she just has to process and deal with this new information and her impending decision of what she's going to do, what her reaction is going to be. Her rage really simmers in this book, and it is expressed as like a mental health crisis. Because for someone who's like kind of been shat on and, you know, put down her whole life, like you do tend to bring these things inward and believe they're your fault somehow and that you just have to deal with it. It was very, very sad. And honestly, I didn't hate the fiance in this book. I don't think you're supposed to, really. You're supposed to kind of be conflicted, but I did hate her father. But her feelings are expressed very beautifully in this way I've never seen, which is in this very long passage that meticulously details her attempt to make and assemble a croquembouche for her wedding. I have never experienced a symbolic croquembouche, but here you have one towering brilliantly over like the last third of this novel. This novel was really stunning. I truly recommend it. I gave it 4.75 stars. I highly recommend. And finally, the fifth book that I said was a true story was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy, the memoir. I've been putting this off for a while, but holy effing shit. In my opinion, this is a must read. And by the way, you should definitely read the audiobook because her reading it is incredibly poignant. I just think everyone should read this book because this should never be allowed to happen again. Good God, this poor girl. To see the effects of all of these insidious kinds of abuse on a person's whole entire being and soul was absolutely devastating, shredding, gutting. And yet she's come out the other side. She did that. Only her. My son actually wants to act, but after reading this, I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, we all know what we know about a certain Nickelodeon show creator. But just the whole thing, not even just him, just adults manipulating children, it is so, so gross. I loved the nuances about narcissism and how it's passed down. I mean, the descriptions of her grandmother almost made me pity her mother and see her as a victim too. And of course, Jennette's father was no help. He's not without blame. I mean, it's just all bad, but somehow the book is so hopeful and incredible. And as I finished this book with tears literally streaming down my face, I literally lifted my fist to you, Jennette. You have my whole freaking heart. All right. So this is my female rage look. I hope that you enjoyed this. What feminine rage books do you recommend? Because I want to read more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.